we rocking and rolling? Okay. Actually, I'm very pleased that we have this small, intimate group because I'm one of the kinds of people that I like to show my glass. And to me, if you're have worked with glass, you know you can't really deal with glass unless you pick it up, handle it, touch it, feel it, smell it, and take a close look at it. And so I brought glass here today that hopefully I've separated it far enough apart so you won't have to clink them together. But if there are pieces that you want to see, especially some of these darker opaque glass pieces, in order to see the iridescence on that, you really have to pick them up and kind of hold them in the light and see what that looks like. And so after I'm done, I'll be more than glad to let you do that. Now, I'm Dave Shetlar. I'm one of the authors of the American Stretch Glass. That's a book that's now out of print, but you can still easily get it on eBay if you don't have it. It's still sort of considered to be the last major book that was done on iridescent stretch glass. My profession is an entomologist, and that's why they made the announcement, Dr. Dave Shetlar. Well, I'm a doctor of bugology, so I'm an entomologist. I tell people when I'm a doctor of entomology, I tell them that my patients aren't supposed to live. You know, most people are trying to kill them, not keep them alive. And so that's what I do as my alternate ego. All right, well, today what is stretch glass? Well, we have a definition in the Iridescent Stretch Glass Society, or the Stretch Glass Society, that basically touches on these things. And basically, iridescent stretch glass was made from 1916 up into the early 30s. It is pressed or blown molded. Now, do you remember, now, what does press molded mean? You didn't know there was going to be an exam.
There always is.
Okay, we put hot glass into a mold, we bring down this plunger and press it into the shape of that mold. Now, what would be blown molded? Okay, yeah, we take a bubble of hot glass and blow it into a mold so it gets that shape. And so, in essence, a mold is involved. We need to understand that. That will separate us out from art glass and other things where you may have a shape, what they call a shaping mold, but virtually everything is done by hand. And so we are pressed or blown molded. We're doped ware. The term that was always used in the industry was they applied dope. Now, of course, today that means something else, but the reality is that this was sprayed with a metallic salt solution. When it hits this hot glass, the solvents evaporate immediately and leave a little fine coating of metallic salt on the surface of it, and that leaves the iridescence. And so there are three types of glasses that actually use that iridescence. True art glass has that iridescence on it. Stretch glass has the iridescence. And what's the other big iridized glass? Carnival glass. Right? So all of those are doped ware, as they would say. Now, in our particular case, we would dope it and then reheat it, and that's the big difference. In this particular case, I've got some examples of the Apern horns that were made by Fenton, and Frank Fenton was very kind to go down one day and collect a bunch of these horns at the time that they were being made. And so the first horn this is the way that it came out of the mold. So it's just the clear blue came out of the mold. I'll pass that around. Now, if that were carnival glass, what they would do is they would then shape it, mold it, do whatever they're going to do, and then they would spray the dope on it. And so this is the horn that just has the dope, and you can see that it's a shiny, where the dope is real thick. It may be a kind of a satiny look to it, but you don't see any stretch marks. Now, if that were carnival glass, that's it. That's all that they would do. Okay?
Type of metallic.
Right. Now, if it's stretch glass, what we do is we now reheat it again. And what you'll see is that merely reheating that glass causes the glass to expand, but the metallic coating on it doesn't expand at the same rate, so it makes these little crackling effects in there. So we now get stretch marks. Now, if you want to enhance those stretch marks, shape it even more. And in this case, the horn was placed into a crimper that crimped the edges of it, and you can see more stretch marks. They even went even further with those horns. They heated it again and pulled down one of the lips and pulled up the other one to give the jack in the pulpit shape. And now you can really see the stretch marks. And just feel the edge of that. You can feel that it's really rough. It's almost like sandpaper. And we stretch glass collectors, we often say, we love stretch glass that has an edge that you could cut wood with. Okay? Now don't do that, you'll chip it. But the reality is that's what we're looking at. That's what stretch glass really is. Now, I find it interesting. People say, well, where did stretch glass come from? Because you see this all the time. All you have to do is go to eBay and enter in stretch glass. Guess what you're going to find that whole page listed with? Stretch vases. No. The technical term for this is a swung vase. Okay? Yes, I understand it's stretched out further than it was. It actually started out about this long, but by heating it and putting it in a rod and swinging it around in a big arc, that stretches it out. And so again, you can see in this one, we can see the wisteria, that's a fin piece, and you can see that the iridescent stretch marks have broken apart so much that they're almost little flakes of iridescence on them. So that is a stretched stretch glass. I'm sorry, it's a swung stretch glass vase. And so when you see those on eBay, I wish we could get that corrected with eBay, but eBay is only interested in selling stuff. So, but the reality is there are swung vases, and then there are vases that have stretch iridescence. Now, one of my mentors, the person who really got me started in sort of the history of stretch glass, was Barry Wiggins. And he always related the story when we would have our stretch glass conventions. He used to attend Rose Presnick's auctions all the time, and she would sell all the carnival glass, and then at the end of that she would have some stretch glass, and she would go by and say, this glass is different than carnival glass because it has no patterns and the iridescent effects look like the stretch marks on a woman's belly. Oh my. Now you can imagine in today's politically correct way, you can't say that, but since somebody else said it, I can repeat that. Okay? So in essence, that's where the stretch glass name came from, is those stretch marks that are in that. Now, as I indicated to you before, how does that occur? Well, there is a doping booth, and basically what they do is they put the hot glass into this doping booth. You can see the lady that was doing this one, the doper in this case, that's the gray gloved hand that you see down there. She's under pressure, she's spraying this dope, and you can see it hitting the glass over there. And it's really interesting when you watch this, you can actually see it get the iridescent effect while it's in that doping booth. Yes?
What kind of metallic salts do they use?
The question is, what type of metallic salts did they use? Iron metallic salt, in other words, iron sulfate will give you marigold. Tin sulfate will generally give you what we call the lighter iridescent colors like that. We don't know what Imperial used to make the smoke. I'd really like to know what that is, and I've actually, some of my material science folks say that we can actually now take a piece of that over to the chemistry lab, and they have actually a way of shining a laser on it, and the reflection of the laser should tell us what those metals are in that particular one. But it was mainly tin and iron were the two primary things that were used when these were made. Now, what was doped glass? I've indicated to you before. Art glass is doped. When you see art glass that has a surface iridescence and stretch marks in that, that was doped. It was sprayed on dope. You're going to hear a lot of people say, no, that the iridescence was in the glass. I agree. There are some glasses that if you heat them repeatedly, some of the iron salts will come to the surface and give you a subtle iridescence. There are some Steuben pieces like that, some Duran pieces like that, and so forth. But when you see that crackly iridescent surface, that was doped in there. Then, to sort of mimic that, but yet to be less expensive, many of the companies, they said, you know, we've got all this glassware that's patterned, we've got all these folds, why don't we spray that iridescent dope on ours? And that was carnival glass. And then at the end of the carnival glass production, the company said, well, let's get rid of all that fancy pattern stuff and let's make a simpler design with this and fancy up or jazz up the iridescent effect and go back to those crackly stretch glass marks that are in them. So as far as I'm concerned, those are the three types of dopeware. What are the technical differences between those? Well, for art glass, you get a gather, you hand shape it. You don't normally do it with a mold, but you may have a shaping mold, but you shape it, then you reheat it, then you shape it, then you reheat it, then you shape it, reheat it, reshape it, reheat it, and then finally you might stick some dope on it. You'll reheat it, maybe shape it some more. So as you can see there, in that art glass, there was a lot of hand work, a lot of hand technology going on. Now in the case of carnival glass and stretch glass, those start out the same. We take a gather of the hot glass, we put it in the mold, we mold it, okay? Then if it's a snapware, we'll talk about that in a minute, you pick it up, reheat it. Now this is where it differs. In carnival glass, after reheating, I bring it to its final shape. I crimp it, I fold it over, I do the different shaping for that. Then I dope it, that's going to give me a shiny iridescent surface, and I put it into Lear for finishing, okay? In stretch glass, what I do is I heat it, dope it, and now there's an extra heating. So there's at least one extra step in making stretch glass. Now, I have a whole bunch of pictures for these, but to me, I think video makes a lot better idea of what really goes on with iridescent stretch glass.
Note that they merely throw away the glass during this warming in phase. After the warming in, a gather of hot metal or molten glass is allowed to drop. This is then doped up with a spray of metallic salts, thus producing a shiny iridescence.